All right, we'll be open for questions here with Dennis Lindsey, the general manager, and the head coach, Coach Quin Snyder.
Before we start, guys, Quinn, do you have anything?
No.
I wanted to congratulate the Rockets on a well-played series. They beat us in every way, injuries, everything that happened. No excuses, so congratulations to them.
Along those lines, Dennis, you always say that the results tell you the truth, both from a context of how close are you and how far away are you as you earn in the playoffs?
Well, it's not just the playoffs. We benchmark ourselves. We always felt historically in Houston and San Antonio, now here, that if you can get inside the top four consistently, that hopefully things will line up where you break through a few years and advance, much like John and Carl did here for 20 straight years, and the run we had in San Antonio, a few years in Houston as well. So there's a bunch of public sites that you can go to with power rankings and analytical models on, the strength of your team. There are a few facts that I'm not sure everybody knows, but after we finished the Rocket series, we played the toughest schedule in the league, including the playoffs. So strength of schedule was number one. We obviously had a rough start, some because of injury, some because of the newness of the team. But then the last run, the last 35 games of the season, I should say, when Rudy got back, we're trying to evaluate how real that is, how sustainable that is. We did feel like there was a good defense that we could build coming into the season. Quinn and the staff, the coaches, did an excellent job of keeping that integrity and building on it. And so the last 35 games, I think we're number one defensively overall by 7 points. There was a bigger spread between 1 and 2 than there was 2. And, depending upon when you looked at it, roughly 17 or 18. So it was impressive. So I think that's sustainable. So, depending upon the metrics you're looking at, what we did this year, obviously a lot of it's dependent upon, are we able to retain everybody, add something to the group, internally improve. But somewhere between the third and sixth best team in the league. The dilemma is Golden State and Houston are clearly in front of us. And to be the last team standing, you have to go through the best teams. So we got a lot of work to do, a lot of evaluation. These numbers aren't frozen in time. Things could change for the better or worse, as everybody knows. But we have a starting point to build from.
Dennis, when you look at what you're needing to add in the offseason, can you give us some ideas of areas of interest and things you want to get better at?
Coach, any thoughts? Sir?
No, go ahead.
So a lot of it, and look, it's when you fall short, it's human nature, natural inclination to look outside your walls. I would start with what we can do internally to improve. We do have a few players that are in an age bracket where if they do what they need to do, they can improve. Quinn and his staff they've shown amazing acumen to get players better, give them larger roles, even when they've hit their mid-20s and early 30s, as we've seen the last 2 years. So I'd start with internal improvement. There's no way to run, no way to hide from it. Our ball security has to be better. Of all the 4 factors, that's the one that we're most challenged with. And look, there's some things that we're going to have to overcome. Rudy's always going to be high center gravity and get bumped around a little bit. We'll certainly work on him and his base, but if there's going to be that quality, everybody that surrounds Rudy needs to be secure with the ball and safe with the ball. I think the playoffs showed us that. The playoffs showed us in the second season how physical it is. So the physicality. is something that we wanted to improve going in the offseason. I think that we did, but we got to build within, and then giving our young players, Donovan in particular, chances to grow. We now understand Ricky's body, I think, better. Mike and his staff understand maybe where there's some limits and how we need to train him. We didn't have an off season with Ricky because he was with the national team. Our group is an exceptional group in the off season. The facility, Quinn and his staff, Mike and his staff are really good. So I'm confident that a lot of the solutions, Aaron, are internal. And then we'll see what comes our way. We may want to do something, but nothing manifests itself. We've had several drafts where we wanted to take some rights to some players, and we just couldn't find a deal. And then every so often, in a draft, you get lucky and you get accomplished what you want to do. So obviously the draft season's coming upon us quickly. We're going to try to prepare and work hard at that, integrate the coaching staff. We got to catch them up a little bit, but we're confident that we can come up with at least the right questions. We'll see about the solutions next fall.
Dennis, kind of going off that a little bit, with Donovan Mitchell emerging this year, are you feeling some pressure to be able to acquire talent now, especially in his rookie contract?
No more so than you always feel pressure to, build a team that the Millers and the fans can be proud of. So what happened last offseason, a few people leaving, certainly that magnified the pressure that you feel. But there's always, if you're doing these positions right, there's that internal angst that you have, and making sure that you're doing your job, paying attention to the right things. So none more so, but we want to be committed to all of our players. Ricky Rubio deserves a good team. He's fought hard through his career, and so same thing with Rudy. Rudy was always confident that we would be good. I appreciate that confidence. So 1 through 17, we feel a responsibility to those guys, Donovan included.
For both of you, was there a point in the season when you sat down and said this roster might be further ahead than you had expected it would be at any point in the year, and you thought this might be worth chasing the playoffs as opposed to changing the direction of how you were going to build the team?
I don't think we had a discussion that was shaped that way with those particular. That dialogue always takes place. So, there's discussion about the roster, but I don't know that it was ever, do we like where we are, where we're going? It's kind of, we like our guys, and I'm lucky to be able to coach the group we had, and we're always looking for ways to get better.
We were just trying to do our best as much as anything, and there was a good team in there somewhere. We just didn't know to what degree, and it took us a while to figure out a few things, and then some health continues to dominate a few of our themes. But there was no, monumental conversation pivot point that, hey, we're, playing for the playoffs. The goal was just always to do our best and then figure out that would give us some information on what we needed to do going forward. And luckily, Quinn and the players, the staff, they all came together. So a lot of the open-ended questions wound up being turning out quite positive. And there were a few questions that maybe I should have had that I wasn't aware of that turned into be positive. So, it's those things are a little bit why this team in a unique way captured the imagination of our fans. Oh, by the way, we want to thank, there were a couple hundred fans at the airport last night. That was quite touching. So we want to give a shout out to all the fans that were at the charter last night.
Are the concepts that have carried you from the bottom quarter of the league to the top quarter of the league going to help you defeat elite teams in the playoffs? Specifically, can these elite teams attack two bigs defensively or shoot long twos at a different rate than the rest of the league, kind of rendering the stats you both have referenced at times it's not as valuable deep in the playoffs?
I don't, I haven't really approached our team from that vantage point. I think we've just always talked about maximizing the guys we have and not setting limits on who we are. And, matchups during the course of the game, at any position are always something we think about. But as far as the two bigs, what Derek did, against Oklahoma City is a good example of, how effective he can be with Rudy. It seems like we talk about this a lot, and, I think it's no different really than when you look at different guys playing together on the perimeter. And we're constantly finding out about how your team fits and works, and we'll continue to try to do that and maximize what we got.
I get the question, David, and if it's meant to be a little bit of a referendum on Derek or Derek and Rudy in combination, I would look at it a little bit different. We can go back to the Clippers series last year where Rudy got hurt, that if there's no Derek Favors, there's no second round in the playoffs. So there's that. In San Antonio, we were able to advance. They were able to advance a few series in some runs where you face a Memphis of the world, you face a Gasol and Randolph. So that big lineup, that physicality, not only is protection if one big gets hurt, but it could allow you to advance. And then certainly the league and the style of play have changed where coaches have opted to play a big and four smalls or a big and a shooting big. And so we consider that inside of all of our team building and procurement. So Jonas Jerebko is a shooting big and shot 40% from three and had a terrific year. Situationally was good, allowed us to win quite a few games. Jay Crowder, Joe Ingles, even Royce O'Neal last night. We played with a big and four smalls where all those guys, whether you want to call one a three or one a four, based upon the defensive matchup. So if we're doing our job, those three lineup buckets will allow Quinn to have options. And the best teams, the teams that always go the deepest and are the last team standing, are, the structure of your team is very important. So we account for, the point that you talked about. It's just not Derek and Rudy who's on the court.
Dennis, you talked about trying to get to the Final Four, or the top four in the NBA. They're considerably older than you are, and you were probably the youngest of the 8 teams left at the end. Is that a conscious thing where you want to get older, or are you just content to build with the younger players and move on up as you go along?
I think it'd probably be too soon to say, because the end in mind isn't to stay young or to get older because you're young. The end in mind is to be the last team standing. So, and some of it is maybe there will be something that comes up that allows us to add experience that's fundamental to our cap. It's fundamental to our culture. There's a fit with Quinn and the players from a chemistry standpoint. And then, maybe the opposite true, that the best option is a young player inside of those same requirements. So it's a little hard to say. Certainly experience, toughness, smarts, unselfishness, shooting will fit the Jazz, and maybe it comes in the form of Epe Udoh or Royce O'Neal. One's 30 and one's 24, so age can be arbitrary. With that said, your point about being one of the younger teams in the playoffs, again, a credit to Quinn that he was able to expedite the development of a young team, and a young team that the primary player was 21 years old and really in a new role for himself. So we're excited about that and the pieces that we have to build from.
We're going to try to do 3 more questions. Jeremiah, Ben, and Chris are on my list right now.
Dennis, you'll have to make a decision with Dante Exum this summer, but injuries have made it difficult to evaluate his growth and progress. How would you evaluate his progress, and have you seen enough to be able to make the best decision you can?
Well, we hope to retain him, so I can start there. Obviously, there's a lot of conversations, and there's a free agent market that it's hard to predict. But Dante's done his job. He's had some unfortunate things happen. We don't think he's injury prone. It just things happen to young players, and sometimes things move in a progression that is linear, and sometimes it's a little less even. And in Dante's case, to no fault of his own or any of the staff, it's been a little bit less even with availability. But when he played in the regular season, he played very well. He was dealing with a hamstring in OKC. He was playing through that, allowed us to win a few games. So he's the right guy. He's got the right level of talent. You don't get that package of speed and size, and it's our job to develop him. And so we'll see what happens.
Dennis, I hope you don't mind jumping just a little bit back into last season. Near the end of the year, you publicly discussed certain, no bias, but certain maybe inefficiencies in the refereeing process that were particularly disadvantaging your team. I hope I maybe stated that correctly in the way that you had brought it up at the time. In the time since, how do you feel the response has been to that? Do you feel it's been adequately addressed? Can you comment on that?
I can comment delicately because I don't want to lose any money. Look, we work hard in all areas of team building, of coaching, of development, of our health performance. Officials are part of the game, and so we're trying to understand that. With that said, we've been clear here since I got here, and then we hired Quinn. We wanted to be a defensive team first. We wanted to be a defensive team that didn't foul. And I think with those philosophies, that travels. That's why we've been able to go on the road and beat good teams, specifically in the playoffs. But there are times where that style of play can lead you to some concerns, if you will, based upon the data that we've seen. The league's working really hard. Not like we said before, we don't feel as though that anybody's out to get us. I don't know how Quinn feels. I haven't talked to him about it, but the OKC series, the Houston series, generally well officiated. I do think there are times where you have rules stated, and then there's a gap between how the rules are stated and how it's called, especially in the second season. We're trying to understand that. And the best way we can do it is keep our discipline, keep our poise, which coach and the staff and the players have been amazing, especially for a young group, coaches included, and proud of that. But one of the things that we felt like, because of the physicality that we saw in the playoffs last year, that we wanted to get stronger and more physical. And I think I said this to Gordon on the radio. There was some thought behind why we added a few guys that look like free safeties and linebackers and defensive ends, because there is a ramped up level of physicality. And speaking to Derek, for example, his length and power and physicality, all those things are magnified to the positive in the playoffs. So yeah, we're working on it. I gave it to David Morway, the project, just to get a fresh set of eyes on the data, and we'll look at it and we'll share in private with the league, but no big concerns based upon the interview that I did last year. But we'll stand on the interview that I did last year.
Last question.
This is for Dennis and Quinn, if you guys don't mind answering. Regarding the relationship between Rudy and Donovan, is it important to see them build a rapport on and off the court going forward when your two franchise cornerstones basically mean a lot to this franchise going forward?
Yes, and I think that's happening. And some of that, you don't have a relationship with someone until you're around them. So from the beginning of the year to now, just like any team, any two players, they're obviously, important players to our group. I think, you saw some of that maturation of that relationship even in the postseason. This last game, the two of them offensively were more connected than they had been. And, you know, Donovan really being our primary point guard, there are some challenges for him with that. And whether it be taking care of the ball or making reads or doing things like that, and they needed each other more. You know, Rudy facing a defense that, you know, was switching 1-5 pick and roll all the time. He and Donovan, it forced them to be even more connected in order to have success. And I think they improved with that as the series went on. It was actually something I challenged him on before the last game. And I think for them both to be thinking about winning and what they need to do, and then for them both to be thinking about, you know, connectivity and what they need to do together. And the good thing about that is that, you know, the relationship, the respect, the trust, those things are there between those two guys. And then, you know, to develop a, you know, one of those rapports that, you know, it'd be great if they said Mitchell and Gobert, you know, and I think those two guys have shared values as far as what's important to them, both as individual players, taking care of their teammates, and collectively as far as winning. So I think it's an excellent question and one that our guys are well aware of.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.